Zeus, the Brazilian coach formerly of SK Gaming, not to be confused with the Ukrainian former in-game leader of Nartas Vincer, Navi. Zeus, former coach of SK Gaming and previously Luminosity when they were called that, has announced that he is leaving SK Gaming and he is going to become a player within the Immortals organization and the in-game leader of that team. Now, Immortals is the team that I have them ranked pretty decently in my top 10. They're like 7th or something. They won DreamHack Summer. They won CEVO Pro Season 9. They didn't qualify for either of the majors this year. They had, when they were formerly called Tempo Storm, they had a top 6 finish at IEM Katowice. So they've had a pretty solid run at some big tournaments. They've had, they've had an okay run at big tournaments. I guess really Katowice is the only big tournament they had a good placing in. And they've had some very good performances in the Tier 2 and Tier 3 competitions. But they've never taken that step up to being an elite level team. Whereas when Zeus was with SK Gaming, formerly Luminosity, they were the best team in the world. They are the best team in the world. And ever since he became a part of that organization, obviously Luminosity at the time, which was around DreamHack Winter 2015, what a lot of people forget is, okay, FNX and Tackle were the players who came over from then Games Academy, later Tempo Storm and Immortals, over to the Luminosity organization, but actually Zeus also came over to become the coach of the team, whereas before that they'd obviously just used Fallen's in-game leading ability to kind of be an in-game coach as well. So as part of SK Gaming, he was there when they won the 2 major titles. He was there for all the big competitions they won, all the numerous top finishes that they've had for this year, all this incredible stuff, and he's been the coach of the team. Notably, hasn't been the in-game leader of the team, because obviously Fallen plays that role, and in fact, if you've read recent interviews with the team, they claim that it's not even so much about set tactics anymore, it's more about like the system they play and the philosophy of how they play, which obviously is instilled in the players from Fallen, and Zeus presumably had some impact on that, and that's around how they play, and maybe he makes small calls here and there in terms of Fallen. So, in terms of breaking down the impact, there's 3 different sets of people we have to talk about here. There's the SK Gaming team, there's the Immortals team, and there's Zeus himself. So we'll start with SK Gaming, the team he's just leaving. Now, in terms of the impact he had on the team, as I described before, he wasn't the in-game leader, but he did say in an interview with Richard that coming up to this last major, this team was actually only practicing 2 maps a day and then 4 hours of theory. So he's obviously playing a very active role in that. So some could say he's having more impact than some coaches that are in teams that mainly just scrim and then have the odd demo review session or discussions after the game. Clearly he was a good force within the team. You can see success came when he joined the team. Admittedly, they also did get FNX and Taco and really revitalized the team, and Cold Zero's level went up. But he clearly had some positive effect on the team. He's worked well with Fallen, it would seem. They speak very highly of each other. We've never seen any problems between them. So the big issue I have is it's hard to determine his impact on SK, but I really, really hope that him leaving doesn't now spoil the system that they have or in any way limit it, or even if it was a 10 out of 10 system, make it go down to a 9 out of 10. Because if that happens and then it ends up costing them titles, ends up costing them success, God forbid it ends up costing them the 3rd major of the year, which obviously would be an incredible feat, the only ones in CSGO to ever win 3 majors in a row and to win all the majors in a year, matching what Navi actually did in CS 1.6 in 2010. That would be an incredible thing they could do, and they're on track to do it. They're on track to be the best team of all time if they can complete these extra accomplishments and continue to be consistently excellent as they have been in 2016 so far. So there's the concern, is regardless of impact he had, if leaving either directly from his impact not being there and being reduced costs the team a chance of success, or even just him leaving psychologically has an impact on the team, or maybe they don't hold together personality-wise, gelling together as well. That's a concern for me because I love to watch the all-time great teams attempt to accomplish feats that no one's ever accomplished in history. That happens so rarely. I mean, you saw, we all got to witness Fnatic undergo that and finally overtake NiP as the best team of all time when NiP seemed like they would never ever be toppled. Now we got a chance to see this SK Gaming lineup do it. Will that happen though if Zeus leaves? I mean, there's a saying in hockey that you never fuck with a streak. Like if someone's on a streak of scoring a goal a game or a point every game for 20 games, they literally are so superstitious in hockey, they'll tell you, right, put on your socks the same way in the morning, take the same route to work, have the same breakfast. Because what they're trying to do is, no one really knows why you started that streak or why you're on that streak. Sure, the fact you're a fantastic player and you practice a lot and you dedicate yourself and you're trying to accomplish something great, those are all good factors, but you never know what little detail might be helping aid that which if you fuck with and change things around, maybe that's part of why the streak ends or some problem. So likewise, I feel like I don't personally like the timing as much, thinking outside of Zeus's personal desires and dreams, in as much as I'd like to just keep everything the same until the team drops off and stops winning and goes down to being the second or third best team. Then leave if you want to. You finished the goal. The huge mission is totally over at that point in time. Go do wherever you want. So I think it's potentially a problem that he's leaving right now when they're in the middle of their hottest streak ever. They've never looked as good as they did winning that major in incredibly dominant fashion. Now, within the team, as far as I know, as I kind of alluded to, he plays more a consistent/assistant role within the team. So what he does is he works with Fallen, they implement tactics, they come up with ideas, they discuss it with the team, they keep the team system together, they discuss the philosophy of the team, and presumably he helps integrate some of this stuff since Fallen's playing in the game himself. I would also speculate that during games, he makes small tactical observations or suggestions to Fallen, who then calls them within the team, or other players within the team listen and they implement them in the game. Now, I have a very good analogy for this that a lot of people probably haven't thought of, which is actually going to be Devilwalk with Fnatic. Now, what's funny is a lot of people have thought of this example, but they use it in a negative sense. They say, right, Devilwalk was the coach of Fnatic. They were the best team in the world. They'd won ESL 1 Katowice 2015. They were a major winning team. They were doing very well. They were number one. And then he left because he thought he could be a player and he could be an in-game leader and he could go elsewhere. And then since he left and he had very little success in that team that was the old Luminosity, the North American lineup, and then Winter Fox, they say, right, well, that shows that he didn't really do anything in Fnatic. They kept winning without him. And he wasn't as good as he thought he was as a coach and in-game leader. And actually, obviously not as good as Prodax. And also they say, right, that kind of shows that, like, you know, he overestimated his own impact and he should have stayed with Fnatic. But actually, I go the other way with that. I look at the impact that Devilwalk had on Fnatic and I say, clearly this guy brought something to the table. And I think it even made Fnatic better. Because when he was with Fnatic, they'd already just got Vugo. Vugo came in as the analyst and his job is just to watch the demos and give information. For me, Devilwalk, the key aspect of why he didn't have success later and why he was good in Fnatic is how he worked with Prodax. That's similar to how I'm going to draw the analogy about how I think Zeus worked with Fallen. Obviously, I have to speculate because I don't know Portuguese and haven't spoken specifically on that topic with Zeus or Fallen. But in Fnatic, one of the ways that Devilwalk was a good player was that he was the guy where he knew Pronax for a long time. He'd played with him since late 2013. He knew him as a person. He was a friend of his. And so at events, whenever you saw them outside talking or whatever, it would always be a group of like, okay, so Crims and Olaf and those other guys would be over the other side. And for maybe JW and Flasher would be together. But then it would always be Devilwalk talking with Pronax and smoking with Pronax and stood over at the side having a conversation with Pronax. So first of all, as a friend and kind of a comrade and some companionship, Devilwalk definitely provided a lot to keeping Pronax sane and keeping him within the system of Fnatic and not wanting to leave. When there was discussions of him leaving and different players wanting to leave, he did a good job in this sense. Likewise, he's also someone where, because he knew Pronax, he was able to be a good sounding board because he knows Pronax's mind. So he knows how to give him a suggestion that he might be able to implement. Or as someone stood outside of the game, watching all the screens, he can suggest something to Pronax. Like, hey, maybe do this. That Pronax himself can't see because he's in the game and having to go with information he hears from his teammates. So I think in that sense, he worked as a great assistant to Pronax. And it's sure, Fnatic won the title, ESL 1 Cologne, major title, without Devilwalk, but they looked worse as soon as Devilwalk left. Like, they actually started to go downhill. Winning that one was kind of a miracle win. You remember the incredible fashion they came back from Virtus Pro, then to be envious in the final. This was not Fnatic at their absolute peaks. And after that tournament, they didn't win any more until they changed the lineup and Pronax left, actually. After that tournament was where they went home, and now they were just one of the top 3 teams in the world, and they were very good, but they couldn't win the title, and they had their own weaknesses that suddenly became apparent that hadn't really been before when Devilwalk had been there. So I don't just put it on Devilwalk as being like not as good as he thought he was and not a good coach. I think he played a role in that team that was valuable. Now, later, as Pronax left, they evolved into a different team that wasn't as tactical and went in a different route. Maybe they were starting that evolution before, and that was how it made sense for him to go, but I think he played a key role. And so likewise, I think that's going to be a similar scenario with Zeus and Fallen potentially. So I still think they can be the best team in the world. I still think they can maybe even be the best team of all time and accomplish that goal. But I have to feel like unless he did nothing or he was doing nothing recently, that they're going to lose something with him leaving. I think that having that extra head, someone who's intelligent and wise about the game and knows how to read the game and has worked with those players, I think that's kind of invaluable. So I think that they're going to lose something. I'm not sure what or how much yet. Now, in terms of Immortals gaining him as a player and as an in-game leader, because that's the key thing, he's going to join as the in-game leader. Now, first of all, the player they're removing, Showtime, for me was easily the worst player. Like, I'll admit, Lucas also has his issues sometimes, but being he's the twin brother of one of the big names in the team, and he's been in the team a long time, I doubt they were going to remove him anyway. So to me, it's obvious that Showtime was the player who's going to get removed. I think he's had his issues. To me, he's the one guy in the team who always looked a bit out of position. Like, he has okay skills sometimes, but I don't think he's used very well. And unfortunately, it's probably just because other people have the spots that he ideally would do in another team. So he probably should go to the third or fourth best Brazilian team and try and take up a role he wants to play in those teams and show us that he's a good player in his own right, because we haven't seen it so far in the time he's been in Tempo Storm and the time he's been in Immortals. So since he's replacing the worst player, I think that makes it an okay gamble to make, because it's unlikely Zeus can be that much worse than Showtime. I have to figure. Now, even if he is worse, it also might not matter, because he can obviously bring in-game leading and shot calling, which could be more of a benefit to the team as a unit and could make them more successful. So they are a team who seem to need in-game leading and shot calling, because Bolts took over that role at Gfinity, and then they got rid of Peacemaker. So taking that off Bolts just frees him up. And for me, if you take that role off Bolts, now you can really unleash the firepower of this team, because the firepower of this team should come from this trio. It should be Phelps should be the star player. So Phelps should be your Olaf Meister of this team. Bolts should be your Crims. So you need to free him up completely so you can just play that role, be very consistent and a good all-rounder. And then N1, Henny, should be your Orpa, who in this analogy is your JW, the guy who hits the crazy shots and does amazing impact kills, but doesn't necessarily dominate the game and put up the biggest numbers. So with that trio, now Immortals become scary. I already thought they were a solid team, and we've seen them beat NIP in a best of 3, we've seen them beat Virtus.pro in a best of 5 already this year. But now I think they can potentially really be unleashed, and hopefully he can bring some of this world-class in-game leading and shot calling to the team. Because I've heard that he was actually the in-game leader when this same core was Games Academy in 2015. So he's worked with them before. Hopefully he can bring more to the team now, especially now that Phelps has developed more, which is something they didn't have when they were in Games Academy, because he hadn't joined, and also he just hadn't developed as a player until a couple of months ago. So another aspect that I think he can really help them out with is, I've never understood why people associated Immortals and Luminosity/SK, aside from the fact they are Brazilian. Like, sure, they are Brazilian. Some of them have been in different teams. Bolts was on Luminosity/SK. Obviously now FNX and Taco used to be on the Gamers Academy, now Tempo Storm, now Immortals lineup. So sure, they share players, but for me, their playing style and strengths share very little. Like, even their map pool is very different. Like, for example, the guys from Immortals were fantastic on Cobblestone as their best map at a time when the guys from Luminosity were only just getting it even into their map pool solidly and starting to get wins on it. Then you got to look at the fact that the guys from Immortals, actually their biggest failing is not knowing what to do in deep games and being able to close them out, not knowing what to do in man advantage situations and playing under pressure. This is what's cost them their chances to qualify for majors and play at the biggest jumps except Katowice, but even then they failed in the quarterfinals there to get to the semis because of these same reasons. Meanwhile, you go over to SK, those are their strengths. They're fantastic when they're in situations where they have a numbers advantage. They're fantastic at knowing what to do in the key games to close the game out and to beat an opponent on a certain key moment of the game. They have none of these problems, and that's why they dominantly won the majors. So to me, if Zeus can come over and figure out a way to teach some of these younger guys some of the things that he helped implement in the SK Gaming lineup, now maybe he can help them be a better team in terms of style as well. Because for me, that's the thing I don't buy about SK. Sure, Fallen's a genius, he's done a lot of things, and I can definitely see that people like Cold Zero have developed into taking more of a team captaincy as well in some sense, that people like Taco know their role, and FNX is a veteran. This is all great stuff, but I don't believe all these guys just out of nowhere one day woke up and just understood this way to play this very specific system. To me, that shows they've been taught and it's been drilled into them, and now they understand themselves the decision making of how to do what and in what situation. So if you can do any of that to the Immortals team, they'll get even scarier, and then maybe they can be like a top 4, top 5 team in the world, and we'll have 2 Brazilian teams who are among the best in the entire world. So I think it's a good move, a good net move for Immortals. In terms of Zeus, though, this is the thing. In leaving SK, he loses out on the chance for any more of the success with SK. If they accomplish that goal, win that last major, and become the best team of all time, he wasn't there for that. He can't claim responsibility for that. Sure, he can say he put in place some of the things they did, but he won't be the coach who did that for them. With that said, sure, if I think from his perspective, fair enough that he wants to accomplish his own dreams, his own goals, which apparently is to play, if he can. Now, the reason why there are so few great in-game leaders who become coaches. And the reason why so many want to stay playing is not just salary and prestige and all the rest of it, which is to some degree, but it's also because for you personally, it's not the same to win when you're a coach as when you're a player. When you win as a coach, the best way I ever heard it described was by Phil Jackson, the legendary NBA coach who won 11 championships with the teams that he had with Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal and Scottie Pippen. When he won these 11 championships, he used to describe it as the satisfaction is from working with these young guys. I mean, young relative to him, he's like 50s, 60s more. It's working with these young guys and then seeing them accomplish their own dreams, their goals. And you feel a great satisfaction because you know the role you played in helping them get to that point and providing support and giving them ideas and motivating them. But ultimately, it's them who accomplish the goal. And I have to feel like it's the same way for players in CSGO. If you're the coach and they win, it's like, yes, you feel fantastic because you were part of the goal and you wanted them to win and you wanted to be part of this victory and all the rest of it. It's not the same, though, as if you were even the worst player in the team. I'd rather be Fiflaren in the team winning the major, ESL 1 Cologne 2014, than be Devilwalk winning ESL 1 Katowice 2015 with Fnatic. It's just not the same. And so I can understand like his goal, dream to win within a team as a player. He wants to do that. With that said, if I had to if you put a gun against my head and said, you have to bet now and we'll look in the future what happens, does he succeed individually as a player or not? I'd say no. I'd say he probably doesn't. Like everyone keeps saying he plays Rank S and ESEA and he's decent enough. And he plays FPL. Okay, that's all great. None of that really matters in actual pro play. There's plenty of players can play at that level who aren't any good in pro play and have their issues on stage. We don't know what he's going to be like in that sense. Also, he's quite an old guy. I think he's like 29 years old. It's very rare that someone like that can be any good at all. People like to point out, oh, Taz is still pretty good. Yeah, Taz is good on certain maps every now and then. There's a reason why his stats aren't bananas, though, and why he's not a star player by any metric. Oh, Forrest is super good. Yeah, Forrest is super good. He's one of the rare exceptions to that rule who's still got incredible aim and still got a really high skill ceiling. He's an extremely rare example. And those players we're talking about have decades of top-level pro play, decades of top-level success, and none of them are near their peaks anymore. Whereas you talk about Zeus, okay, this is a guy where he used to play 1.6 like a decade ago and barely accomplished anything that's even worth relevant mentioning in any kind of international CS context. There's nothing at all, essentially. Just playing in Brazil, basically, in terms of results. Apparently, he was a Source player in a team called Yeah. Okay, great. Don't know much about Source. Don't know how relevant that's supposed to be. And was the Brazilian scene even relevant in Source? As far as I know, no. So you got to look at it ultimately and say there's no pedigree, there's no basis to say he'll be a good individual player. Now, with that said, he doesn't necessarily have to be. His role is in-game leader. Even just being an average to low-level pro, as long as he doesn't die and feed a lot, potentially he can help the team in that way. So I think ultimately I can understand this move and I can understand the reasons why. But I think for SK, it's probably a little bit bad. For Immortals, it's good. For Zeus, it's a little bit bad and a little bit good in terms of how I think his career could go and how he thinks his career could go. So it's an interesting move, certainly. We'll all keep our eye on it. But I just certainly hope he doesn't end up regretting it and that SK don't end up regretting this happening.